So, hi everybody. My name is Phil DJ, not MC. DJ right click Valentine. DJ because of my excellent taste in music. Right click because that was my Appalachian Trail through hiking name. Valentine is my last name given to me by my father's side. I am also a person in recovery date, or I like the way that, what was it? I saw recovery established, right? That was my friend Greg. Recovery established in 1987. As a matter of fact, the end of 1987. So recently, oh, wow, today is 36 years and I'm working on 37. I think it's hard to believe that I've got this old. Got into recovery when I was 28 years old. I am now also serving as the executive director for the next 2.5 months or so of the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery and looking at retirement on October 4th of this year, the day before my 65th birthday. I don't know that if you ever completely retire from the recovery field. It would be nice if you graduated with recovery, but many of you know it doesn't quite work that way, right? Anybody graduated from their recovery? Michael, you graduated yet?
Not yet.
No. Would you like to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday.
We got a lot of other people here from CCAR. The fabulous CC Celine Diepa. Hi, CC. Say hi. She's just saying hi. She's just
Hi,
waving
I'm
hi.
Celine. Hi, everyone. Happy midweek Wednesday.
Cool. So what we're going to do is today's topic was released on the little flyer that went out. Michael said had a little typo in it. It says that I'm going to be on this webinar from 10 a.m. this morning Eastern Standard Time to 11:30 p.m. So you guys, we got about almost 14 hours together. So I'm gonna just listen to me rant. No, it's not gonna be
Cancel everything. Cancel
14.
everything.
No, it just goes to 11:30 this morning. Hello, Regina. How you doing, girl?
I'm doing well. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, that's good. Um, I see a lot of friendly faces on here, not the friendly faces we talk about in the emergency department, actual real friendly faces that are very friendly. So today's topic is deception. And I'm going to have a few of you introduce yourselves. I'd like to know where you're sitting. And I'd like you to tell us about a time you have been deceived. Now, the trick is going to be to try to keep this to minimum. Just give us the highlights of the deception, the time you have been deceived. So, like I said, I already introduced myself, but I think I'll talk about, I think one of the more common areas that you can get deceived is as an employer. And you have an interview process and you do all the everything you can to try to assess the person's skills, talents, and ultimately character, what type of personality you're bringing in. And I can remember Jolie and I like interviewing this man. Oh, now, man, it has to be 20 years ago. I'll just use his first name. His name was Barry. And we got out of 2 interviews with him, and each time we said, this man is almost too good to be true. Ever said that? This employee is too good to be true. And in this case, it proved out that the things he did with his electronics, not showing up for work, I mean, he lasted like a month, and we were a very small agency, and it was the level of deception was extraordinary, and we've gotten a lot better at assessing people if they're right for a role. I guess it's the best way to use it. But even now, we will err on the side of being generous and give people a chance. But at times we still get deceived, or I still get deceived. And we'll talk about how we respond to deception down the road a little bit. But I want to know if anybody would like to raise their hand, introduce yourself, and talk about a time that you have been deceived. Now, not everybody, don't jump and raise your hand all at the same time. You do know that there's a little mouse or a touchpad that you can go down to reactions. Mine actually has a whole raise hand button you can click on. And look, your hand can raise. It's fun. Like, it's the wonders of Zoom. But Mike Doyle, he doesn't like quiet or me struggling, so he's helping me out. Thanks, Mike.
No problem. Hey, Phil. Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Mike Doyle. I am recently changed roles. Left Reliance Health about a month ago now, and
You did?
yep, I started my own thing, Connecticut Recovery Support Center, and I'm also on the board at Community Speaks Out. So we're sitting in my home office, which is my office. We'll just call it that at this point, and just looking for whatever the future holds. So, when have I been deceived? Phil, it sounded like you were describing the employee that I hired. Two interviews. Couldn't have sounded like a better fit for my recovery coordinator position, which is kind of like it was our house cat, and took care of the groups and took care of people and everything. And the one thing I try to stress is I'm like, look, you have to show up. You have to be here. And it was over 30 days and 7.5 months that she missed. I'm like, I've been working since I was, I don't know, probably 10 with the paper out. I don't know if I've missed 30 days yet. So maybe this year I'll hit that. But it was the work ethic. It was, all of a sudden, questionable things were happening and things like that. There was one incident that, we were up at the Capitol, testifying, and she dropped a few people off with our van and decided it was a good idea to take the program van home and leave it at home overnight, so that was sort of a no-no. But the way I look at things, everything happens for a reason. It was a huge learning experience. I learned a long time ago when I was in the Air Force and an Air Force supervisor to documented everything until it came to the point to where she was not the best fit for the program, and that's where we parted ways. And and it was tough. It was tough because there was some stuff where I actually had to advocate for her to be hired because she had some things that probably wouldn't have been kind of copacetic as far as like HR went. And I said, look, in other fields this may not be, this is automatically kind of a no, but in our field this is probably valuable stuff to relate to people and going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah,
great example. Hi, Jesse from Minnesota. What's happening, Jesse?
Hey, Phil. My name's Jesse Kaplan, everyone. Hello. I'm the regional manager for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge in Minnesota. So as far as the time that I was deceived, the first thing that came to my mind was a big one. It was in 2008. Had been having a trial for a felony that had lasted almost 3 years. And I think everybody was getting sick of the sort of the rigmarole back and forth. And I took a deal for probation. However, when I got to court sentencing, the judge threw it out and gave me 5 years in prison instead. It was my first round in the court, so I didn't know that I could have tried to withdraw my plea, but I felt very deceived. In addition to, I'll add that my lifestyle at that time was living a life of deception as well. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that was, wow. Joshua.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Josh Warren. I'm the statewide recovery coach coordinator at the Portland Recovery Community Center in Portland, Maine. So thank you for for allowing me to be here. The first thing that comes to my mind, I'm someone in recovery, and I was deceived greatly by drugs and alcohol. I thought drugs and alcohol was going to be my friend. It was going to be the escape. It was going to make me feel good. And boy, was I wrong. I became addicted, and it became my worst enemy, and such a source of pain rather than a source of relief. So that's what came to my mind. Yeah. Thank you.
Great example. Amen. Can relate to that. Anybody else? A time you've been deceived. Introduce yourself and a time you've been deceived. Need a few more hands. Come on. No one else has been deceived? Wow, you guys, come on. Rita, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This happened over 50 years ago,
And you still remember it.
and I still remember it.
Yep.
There was, at that time, supposedly my boyfriend, and he had this elaborate ruse going on with funds that he had,
Oh,
and he wrote a check which wasn't even worth the paper that it was written on, but he happened to write it to my another friend who happened to be a police officer. And it turned out to be very ugly. He
Mhm.
ended up being arrested, but he wrote bad checks to a friend of mine. And I had vouched for him, thinking, this was really what it was supposed to be. He had these funds, and it was all wall of mirrors, just a
Eh,
total smokescreen.
Now that's a deception. Thank you, Rita, for that. Edgardo, you're muted. Unmute yourself. I know this is probably your first Zoom meeting, dude.
First time.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I dug deep on this one because I really wanted to introduce myself to the first time I was deceived, and I found it. It was the first time figuring out Santa Claus wasn't real, and I knew that I got to know that my parents, they knew. And then after that, it was a lot easier when I was being deceived, because if the first two people that raised me were in on it, then I knew what deception looked like. It was a hard feeling for me. I use that a lot.
Wow. Thank you. Wasn't expecting that. That's
Right.
cool. Jessica, how are you?
Good morning. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for having me here this morning. I am actually the current advocacy manager for Rye Cares here in Rhode Island. And in regards to deception, so and I'm going to keep it a little bit light here for a Wednesday morning, but if anyone on here has any experience with online dating at all, you most certainly have been deceived with the rest of us. So,
Thank you. Michael, do you know who Samsung is? Samsung.
I didn't figure out how to change the name, but my name is Christian Bobby, and I'm based here out of Colorado.
Cool.
Yes, sir. I work with Stride Sober Living. I am their prison in-reach coordinator. I was recently incarcerated, and they appointed me after I showed my work ethic through the program to go back into the prisons and do in-reaches for inmates, for men and women that are coming home within 180 days. So we also do a lot of work with homeless shelters here in Colorado, Salvation Army, Denver Rescue Mission, and it's a bit deceiving to work with them as well. And I love homeless people in the sense that I love all people, but it's just a lot of the times they basically just want to get out of the shelter because they just want a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
They
Gotcha.
get their resources that they need they'll just up and leave the program because they just admit, hey, I just want to go get high again. So that's my deception.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody? Thank you, Christian. Anybody else talk about, introduce yourself and a time you have been deceived? Ivan, thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Ivan, Center Manager for New Haven C-Car. A time that I was deceived was by my own hand, of course, and that was during my active addiction. I tried very hard to kick it on my own, thinking that, you know, by changing brands, by doing things in different ways, I was going to be able to do it. And that was a ruse, that was a deception of my own creation. Learned very quickly that it was something that I couldn't do by myself.
Very good. Thank you. Kevin, good to see you. Unmute yourself though, so we can hear you.
Yep. How you doing, Phil?
Perfect. You sound good.
Okay, and thank you. I think the biggest deception that had the biggest impact on my life was when my grandparents told me that my mother didn't want me and that my mother was no good and all those different things. And that had a big ripple effect in my life. And it caused a certain attitude towards my mother. But then come to find out as I got older, it was mental health and drug addiction, why she was in the condition that she was in. But she never had said to me that she didn't want me. So I think that was the biggest deception in my life.
That's huge. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Anybody else? Michael, you've been deceived?
I've been bamboozled so many times. You ever heard of
give me one.
3-card Monty? One time I was on the city bus, and this gentleman that was in front of me, he was flipping these cards, and I got intrigued with it because there was 2 other individuals winning, and I was like, I want in it. So I jumped in it, and then I realized they all jumped off the bus when they took $80 from me. They all jumped off the bus together, and then a couple of days I seen them together in another spot. I was like, dang, I was bamboozled.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great one. 3-card Monty. Priscilla, you had your hand up. You're not getting away that easy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Priscilla Schaefer, and I'm in Michigan. And I just realized you're being recorded. I'm like, oh, no. The things I could say if there was no recording and then there was no phones. And I'm like, I wish I could say some things, but I'd rather just leave it on the shelf. So I guess I have to say something. Now, the 3-card Monty, now that sounds fun. And I'm like, I totally have observed, and I caught on for those people looking on what's in. I was like, oh, I'm so smart. So I guess I'll share something. I would say the deception of the world that I got into in a very young age, that this was great and this was wonderful, and this is exciting, and and not to say the word, but the stigma goes with it. I'm born and raised and grew up in Detroit, and what a life I lived, or so I thought. And then when I got out of that life and got into recovery, at the beginning, and no disrespect for the world of recovery, but in the beginning, I got into the deception of even like potential being groomed by others, let's just say you guys maybe heard the word of 13-step life, all the things, people that you may have met. And I say same person, different color hair people, whether male, female, whatever, that they're in recovery. And so what I learned along the way, what I can go places and take what I want and leave the rest. And if they don't have anything I want per se, I have to be mindful that what they say, sober horse thieves of life. So got some nodding going on or whatever. So even though I thought this world of recovery that everybody's great and wonderful, and I promise you, I have had some experiences, like I said, that I'm not saying per se physical relationships, but personal friendship relationships, employer relationships, as an employee, those kind of things along the way. And at the end of the day, I've learned a lot, and it's sad to say, but I
Mhm.
don't get into the game. And what I do know is sometimes, if this makes sense to anyone, those who have the gold make the rules. So the deception of what is recovery. So, you know, if you're real, I'm real with you. And if you're not, I smile and be polite and take what I want when I leave. So I hope that is insightful in some way to anyone. So
Thank
just
you.
because people say they're in recovery, whatever that means to them might not be the same to person.
Gotcha. Thank you. Edgardo, you got somebody else with you.
Hello, I'm Christina. I'm a volunteer.
Hi, Christina.
And I just wanted to say that I was deceived when, after being in rehab for 4 months and then being clean for about 6, I thought that I could just have one.
No.
And yeah, that's not the case. I can't have any.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Great example. Thank you. Ed, good to see you.
Thank you, Phil. It's good to be here. Oh, wow. I was hesitating from sharing because whenever I think of deception, I think of the very first time I was deceived. And it hurt big time. It was fresh out of college, and this Midwest farm boy decides to pull up roots and move to the big city. So I moved to New York City. And being alone, not knowing anyone in the big city, you start dating and wanting to be the world's greatest actor and moving to New York City. This person posed as a theater person who could do all of these things for me. Not only that, but he has this project he was creating I could benefit from. He just needed some money. I did not have a whole lot moving to New York City from the Midwest, but I signed over money. 2 days later, I never saw him again. I was ghosted. It hurt.
I bet.
Not only from an emotional perspective, but also from a security financial perspective as well. So it was a double ouch. But I look back, it's embarrassing and all these things. One doesn't want to share about it, but I swear I never forgot about it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How much money was it at the time? I'm curious.
2000.
What? Wow. That was a while ago, I'm sure, right?
1976.
Wow. Ouch. Yeah, that's painful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Shireen.
Hi, I'm Shane. I'm C-Card Department of Corrections. I'm now in Waterbury office. My deception was at the beginning in the 1980s where I've gotten in some trouble. So they made it look so good and look so pretty. They was like, oh, all you have to do is go away for only a year. And, you can start all over. And the deception was, it was not a year. It was 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I had to go with what they gave me. It was court mandated, and I put my hand up for it. But that was a rude awakening, but it was also a blessing.
Shireen, who do you think who deceived you in that specifically?
The lawyer could have told me the truth, like it's more than a year or more.
So it was the lawyer. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I think Jesse was talking about it seemed like the judge deceived him in the legal system. Anybody else a time you've been deceived? Hi, Melissa. I don't know why I can't hear you.
Try logging out and then logging back in if you can.
All right.
Hear me now?
Yeah, you fixed it.
All right. So, hi, everybody. I'm the Director of Peer Recovery Support Services here at Right Cares. And I heard a couple of people say this as well, being deceived by addiction. You know, I feel like I deceived myself so many times, you know, just telling myself so many lies of, you know, I'm only gonna have this many this day, and, you know, I'm gonna stop tomorrow, or what the case may be. And really, you know, just thinking about that as everybody was speaking, you know, it's so true. You know, I really was doing that to myself. And that's really the biggest deception I can say that just stuck out to me. Um, that's really all I have.
It's a great one. Thank you.
You.
Well, let's talk to an artful recovery. Full of art, she is.
Absolutely. It is overflowing.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil and everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Laura Waters of An Artful Recovery and Beyond. So I totally agree. I mean, self-deception, yeah, number one. And the biggest one in my life that stands out to me was really at the beginning of the downward spiral in my life. And I was married at the time, had just gotten married, and my mother gave all of her children, actually, not just me, a sum of money. And the person that I was married to said, "Oh, you know, let me invest this for us, and you know, we'll grow our money over however many years' time." So it took me a few months to agree to that, but I did, and I never saw that $30,000 again. So, and like Christina said, marriage was a huge deception, and that was a big part of it.
Wow. You guys have some. I wonder if it's possible to even go through life without being deceived. Is it possible? I don't know. Anybody else? Introduce yourself in a time you've been deceived. Hi, Brandy.
Good morning. My name is Brandy Anderson Willis. I'm here in South Bend, Indiana, and definitely have been deceived. I kind of expect it from out in the community, but I think what's really hurtful is when I work for organizations who seem to stand for certain viewpoints, and then it's different when I get in there. The culture is totally different, and it throws me off. And I get very disappointed and wondering if there's people that actually care, you know, for the communities that they serve in these positions. So that has bothered me because I've seen that happen more than once.
Woo.
I almost didn't want to say that out loud. I just want to say that.
No,
That was it for sure.
I would say, Brandy, you're spot on. I think many of us can relate to that experience as well. Hi, Kai. How are you?
I'm well, Phil. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, that last share really inspired me to also speak up as well. I joined an organization that was faith-based, and they stood behind the idea that you know, everyone was here, non-judgment, until they found out about things about me, and then that judgment activated. And yeah, it was yeah, I think it was like overall a very big wake-up call for me of you know, finding the places where you know, values of compassion and forgiveness were real. And yeah, it's one thing to say, and then it's another thing to practice. So yeah, that's learned from that experience. So I appreciate what was shared before, because I think that yeah, that really resonated.
Gotcha.
Okay, Mr. Phil, I'm ready now.
Who's that? Percy?
Yeah, this is Percy Smith. How's everybody?
Well enough, Percy.
All right. Can I give you two? One then in addiction and one is in recovery.
Well, if they keep it under like 2 hours, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. I was deceived thinking that the guy on the corner had my best interest at heart. When I gave my $20 to get two of those, they went through the alley, but it kept going through the alley.
Mhm.
And I took my car and rode around the block, and I was like, "Uh-oh, you've been had."
Yep.
Right now, in recovery, I would like to say as a peer recovery coach specialist, whatever, dealing with the participants in their process. You pour in to those individuals to find out that they wasn't interested in recovery the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I got deceived by that and looking at it like, okay, I'll be here when you get back.
Gotcha. Thank you, Percy. Great examples. Hi, Lisa. How are you? Long time no see. How have you been? You can get yourself unmuted, I'm pretty sure. No, you can't now? I still can't. You're still muted. I don't know if I can.
Unmute. I did it. Wow. That was an accomplishment right there. I was I knew how to do this. My name is Lisa Ferguson. I own a sober house. So deception, I started to laugh. I went, come on. It's like a minute to minute thing. But at the same time, I get a lot of truth too mixed in with it, which makes it even harder to I keep the faith. I just keep the faith. But the one that came to mind, there were so many that came to mind because you can't get through life. And I remember it took me so long to realize it's my turn, to take the hit. Everybody takes the turn getting the hit. I remember the one that stands out from all the others is that somebody told me that he loved me and would I marry him, and on this huge romance thing. And I thought it was moving a little fast, but then it turns out he had a girlfriend, and the two of them, and I did marry him, the two of them would go around marrying people and then that were drug addicts or alcoholics that might have a little money or property. And then he was also a coke dealer, which I think if you're doing coke, I think you should marry your drug dealer. And and so he gave me uncut coke. Almost died, and she gave the guy, and I didn't know, and I was in the hospital. He was in the hospital. We both almost died, and we didn't know what was going on until one of the lawyers, because of course now we're getting divorced, and one of the lawyers came forward to me, lawyer for the other side, not yeah. I mean, and he said he would deny everything, but he came forward and he told me what was really happening. And I knew I had a bad picker. I mean, I knew I didn't have that was obvious. But at the same time, thank God for this guy, who came forward and set the truth straight. So the movie's coming out. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure. Okay. But yeah, I think, and I still have to take my turn, I still take my turn. And that's, like you said, it's part of life. It's just part of life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. First question for you to ponder and then raise your hand. And I'd love to get your input on this. What does deception have to do with coaching recovery? What does deception have to do in your role as a recovery coach? Cece.
Stating that you'll do something for a recovery and don't follow through.
So, okay, so that would be deception on the recovery coach's part, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so you have to be sure of your intention there. I agree with you. What does deception, talk to me about deception and recovery coaching. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Phil. One of the things I've noticed is that in my whole learning process is that pretty much always it starts with my personal self-deception. I see something, I observe something, I dismiss it, and I go, it's not, not really real, but I do it anyway. Or I do it with malice aforethought in that, okay, so I'm not really, I see that there's something going on here. She's not really, like she's fooling around, but now that gives me an excuse not to fool around, but to go, it's not real important. It's like, I got an out now. So in my recovery coaching and working with another, um, I really look for that. Now, it's obviously this is about me. This is discovering and managing my own stuff. But I'm looking for that time when the individual bought into, like, why did they buy into it? And what are they buying into? So I don't buy this, I'm just a victim and, I didn't know. And that's 100% true. There's there is a truth to that, but I don't buy it. Like what's in it for you, what's in it for me, what's in it for you. And so I'm looking for that sort of computation of where the individual has agreed to or wanted to be deceived, and then there's there's a payoff somewhere. There's this it could be a little one or it could be a big payoff. Well, that gives me the right to fill in the blank. That allows me to do that. Then I get to continue to be a victim. And now that's why I drink. Actually, that's because of people like him or her, right? So I'm looking for that stuff. I used the right word there. I didn't swear. That was good.
Right.
And then obviously, maybe not so obviously, I'm going with the individual as a coach in the DMS, right? It's like, okay, so how much of this is me and how much of this is them? And, playing that little dance of, who's this really for, Phil?
All right.
Is it for me? We'll see. Thanks.
Love that. Thank you, Anthony. Ed?
Great question, Phil. I think as a recovery coach, a successful recovery coach, it's all about developing and establishing a true, open, and effective relationship. And the relationship is always built on an understanding of expectations of each other. I don't know how deceit can come in if there is a true understanding of the expectations between the two people.
Okay.
And I'm thinking in my first hurtful deception, if I truly understood what he wanted from me, a loan or simply money, I would have truly understood, do I want to do this or not? There would have been no deception. So I think this question of deception for recovery coaches always comes into, is there a true understanding between the two entities of expectations and what is expected of each other and sharing with each other?
Well said. Thank you, Ed. Kai?
Thank you. I sort of established the communication kind of similar to what Ed is sort of touching on, is that I work with individuals that have a lot of process and behavioral addiction. So oftentimes the signs that something's up isn't always there. And so the element of honesty comes from someone saying like, hey, like I'm actually struggling with something, or something happened the other night. And I sort of talk about it with my recovery, saying like, you could come into the session and say everything's good, but where does the progress and the opportunity will actually come from? And you tell me and open up that honesty of saying like, hey, you know what? I hid something from you, or I wasn't completely honest last session. And opening up that channel of honesty is actually something really liberating, because oftentimes when you can get away with it, people will take the opportunity.
Thank you, Kai. Shireen?
my thing is, recoveries come to recovery coaches for help. So for me to deceive them would be like not actively listening to them, hearing them out, giving them time, asking good questions. These are the things that can help them, to show them that you are important. I am paying attention to you. That eye contact means everything, so that they know they're in the right place and they're dealing with the right person that has their best interests at heart to help them along that pathway.
Thank you, Shireen.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I look at it from first from my own experience in addiction. I was the master of deception, and it seemed like everything was an angle, everything was a game, even down as deep as how I was doing. The deception.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, there you go. And that piece right there, the deception on how I was doing, carries over in the recovery coaching when you're working with others. I find that the best way for me, in sobriety and as a recovery coach, to avoid deception on my part is transparency. Try to be as transparent as possible, with everything that's going on. It's tough when you have to deliver news that's not exactly favorable or or happy news, but it's a lot better than candy coating something or painting a rosy picture when it's not going to have a rosy outcome. And I think early on in working in the field, I think I know there's no probably, I struggled more with that, with trying to be more of a truth teller, but not being an a-hole while telling the truth as well. But I think part of it, and I think back to any class I've ever had with you, so and we always laugh at, well, what do you think the answer is? And it's a good question to ask when you really want them to discover it themselves. So there's a lot of discovery, and transparency is a huge one, though. It's like you're gonna see I don't have any sleight of hand anymore, or I try not to, I try not to do that or anything like that. And I think the biggest thing is if I'm not doing well, or if I'm not happy with maybe something, I can say that these days. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Ivan?
Hi. I just think that deception is equal to the absence of honesty and integrity.
Agreed.
What are the true intentions? So if you're recovery and you're looking for wellness, right? You're looking to become healthy and you're telling half truths. I mean, what type of service are you expecting to receive? Same goes for if you're a coach. If you're a coach and you're attempting to assist someone with their recovery and you're not giving them your full undivided attention, you're not providing them all the tools and resources that are at your disposal for their use. Are we being deceitful? Are we really doing our due diligence as coaches?
It's a great question. I think for me, I think you have to, there's some intention about being purposely deceitful. You have to, but so, I don't know if a coach's intention is to help and do no harm, that they can be deceitful. They just might not know. I think for me, there's an intentional factor to it all. Man, you guys really got me thinking, though, all of you. So thank you for this. Mr. Robbins, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, well enough.
Morning,
you know
everybody.
that.
So I think on two different sides, right? I think that for me, right, as a coach, that I need to be a power of example, right? So, for me, I don't have any business coaching anybody if I'm not in this fight and I'm not living this recovery lifestyle, right? I understand, it's not like a do as I say, not as I do kind of relationship, right? So I need to, number one, I need to check myself and make sure that I'm in the right place to be, supporting someone in their recovery. And then on the other side is the recovery. I mean, listen, I know how I was when I was entering into recovery. You know what I mean? I didn't trust anybody. I didn't believe in anything. You know, so part of that is that I got to show a little bit of, as a coach, I got to show a little bit of empathy. You know what I mean? And understanding, and also some truth telling, right? And maybe with some examples of, like, you know, what it was like for me early in recovery. I don't expect everybody that I talk to come in and like just spill their guts and tell me their honest truths, right? So I have to develop my art of how to navigate those conversations, right? And so that a recovery can learn to trust me, right?
Amen.
And be able to, you know, tell me his truths.
Thank you, Brian. Well said. Mr. Barry Richardson.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you was talking about purpose, right? As a recovery coach, my purpose is to help the recovery, right? Support them. And I know my sponsor told me something a long time ago. He said, honesty without compassion is brutality, right? So sometimes I have to be a little bit deceptive and not be quite as honest in order to support recoveries, right? Because I've heard some plans that I knew that, you know, some recoveries that said some things that they were going to try, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna support you, but I don't really believe it. You know what I mean? So I'm being deceptive. I'm telling you, I got you. I'm gonna help you, and I am. But I don't believe what I don't, you know, I don't believe, I don't buy into it. I mean, some guy tell me I'm gonna only shoot dope Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm like, okay, how's it gonna work for you? So I'm being deceptive when I tell them I believe that's gonna work. But in order to be supportive, I gotta be, you know, I can't be brutally honest and say, yo, man, that ain't gonna work if I'm gonna be a recovery coach. You know what I mean? I gotta tell you that, okay, we're gonna see how can we make it work when in all honesty, I don't buy into it.
Let me put, I want to ask you a question about that example. Is there a way you can be truthful and not be deceptive when that situation arises?
Well, you could be truthful, but it might be a little brutal. Might, you know, change the way that they responded to you because you're not really supporting them.
Yeah, but have you ever done that?
What do you mean?
Have you ever, like, someone told you, like, I'm going to use heroin Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I support you in that? You've never said that.
But not that was just a
I know, but I'm telling you, I know you as a coach, but you would probably ask them, how's that working for you?
Absolutely, but
and then you would also probably say, you would tell them your truth. I don't believe that's going to work.
I can't tell them it's not going to work for them. I can tell them I would share with them that it wouldn't work for me.
Well, there you go. So that's the way that you phrased it. But I don't think, actually, when you're working with a recovery, Barry, this is what I'm challenging. I don't think you have a deceptive bone in your body. I just think you just with
manipulation, right?
Yeah, you would just ask a better question if something was really in your craw.
But my point is sometimes you have to kind of, and I think it borderlines being deceptive, but you have to kind of tailor it to make it fit.
Yeah,
so
I hear
isn't
you.
that a form of deception?
What do you think? Just leave it at that. We'll go from there. We gave enough people enough to chew on with that, so we'll just let them chew on. We'll chew on it and think about it for a little bit. Great example, though. I really appreciate it, Barry. Thank you. Edgardo.
Thank you. Good question, by the way. I said I wrote down you know, my recovery has to be first. Make sure that, you know, as long as I am being a beacon of light or living in recovery so other people can actually see it on me, it's better than, you know, using one and deceiving the people that I service. But making promises or using words like you should or you need, you know, for me, I feel like that's the start of a conversation that I don't like having. I just like to ask good questions, but using manipulation instead of persuasion or motivation. And trying to be straightforward. You know, the truth is the truth, and as long as I don't push anyone away with the truth, you know, sometimes it's hard to hear at certain points, so timing is everything. But just having a level of compassion to let someone know I broke my ankle in that same pothole. I mean, you're okay to walk over it if you like, but I'd like to let you know that I saw hundreds of people break their ankle along with my own. And pretty much give as much insight that I can, but also being a great listener too, just listening to everything.
Right. I think what I heard, this is bringing up, and we've heard it a lot, is the role of truth teller, right? And how we wield the truth is our art of recovery coaching, right? That how sometimes we wield it like a very soft mitten or glove. Other times it's like a 2x4. And sometimes I think we'll all agree that some recoveries might need the 2x4. I'm not sure. I mean, it was a 2x4 that got my attention, you know, but that's your art of coaching recovery. It's not always the same for everybody. You have to be finesse, like I think Henrietta talked about, finesse or your hustle, right? So how do you do that? It's really how you coach recovery.
Good.
Thank you. All set, Edgardo?
Yes, sir. Thank
you. Yeah. Kevin.
Yeah, how you doing? It's really making me think. Because I think it was Elgato, he used the word manipulate.
Yeah.
And then I thought about deception. But I had this one peer, well over 70 years old, was living in assisted living, and family was gone, and he was out of New York. And when I first went to meet him, because he was really drinking inside of the home, and they called me over and I sat down and talked to him, and he was just very angry all the time. We sit under the tree, but we wasn't setting goals. We wasn't talking about, get your GED, finish high school, what the job. We wasn't talking about those things. And there was no mobility where he was going to meetings and anything. But then I found this one key thing that when I would go, we could always talk about. And he loved baseball. And but he loved baseball. I'm out of Rhode Island and he's out of New York, so I'm wrapped around the Boston Red Sox, but I didn't want to argue with him because his family was breached. He was missing his grandchildren and everything. So when we would watch the games, even when they played Boston, I would root for the Yankees. And that would make him happy. That would brighten up and day, knowing that, I am a Red Sox fan for real, but I would use that, just to give him some sunshine, just to give him some hope that he wouldn't drink that next day. And he was well into 70 years old. And when you was talking about the intent, and I thought about it because I had left town and I came back. And when I went back to the assisted living, he had passed. He had passed away, and it broke my heart. But when you just said that, I said, "Wow, was I deceiving him, or was I manipulating, or was the intent proper?" So when the coach is coaching, what is my intents when I'm coaching? Like I heard some people say, brutally honest, and words like that. I try to, in some situation, it takes kid gloves to get the work done. And then
Exactly.
in some situations, it takes, hey, this has been going on, or whatever the case may be. But in that situation, because I had a peer who there was no goal setting, we wasn't going to meetings. We were sitting under a tree looking at baseball. And just rooting with him for his team was giving him that day, like, wow, when we would cheer together. So I don't know if I was being deceptive.
Only you can answer that. But I do know this one thing, Kevin, that when you say baseball, you remind me of Field of Dreams and James Earl Jones. Baseball.
All
I
right.
love the way you say it.
All right. Thank you.
Anthony.
Thanks for letting me in again.
Sure.
what Kevin said resonated with me. And at the risk of cross-talking, I found that truth is the most creative interpretation of facts. And I want to say it again, truth is the most creative interpretation of facts. So creative in my mind really means, how I can communicate something and what I see and what I emphasize, so as to spawn or create interest and or raise the tone, the bar, the belief of the individual in a positive fashion. And sometimes that might mean from absolute shite to not so much, crap. So, am I lying, when I'm saying, hey, Yankees, they're awesome, right? And it's, what was that season? What was it? Was it the 90, when the Sox finally won again? And it was like, during that time, it was like, oh man, that was awesome on so many levels. I'm in Vancouver, so I had nothing in the game, but I love that whole story. It was just a great story. And man, the Yankees are an amazing, ball club over the years. So, what was the most creative interpretation of facts there? And I try to use that a lot in my coaching because it's, I'm not going to agree with everything, even most of the stuff my recoveries are saying. When I say agree, I mean completely myself go, yeah, I believe that, but I can, and I always go, I can totally see that for you. And there's a time in my life that was totally true. So 100%. Yeah. Moms can be real bitches. Absolutely.
Right.
I can see that. And the recovery goes, yeah, yeah, and now we have something to move forward on, and, how do you think moms would react to, daughters when they're freaking out?
Yeah.
Oh, and now we're moving forward, but it's, it's little grain by grain, as opposed to, you really should take a look at, how you're treating your mother and give her a little more respect. It's kind of like, what, come on, come on, so anyhow, that's how I've approached it. And and this is my own DMS stuff, right? Am I lying, or am I presenting the most creative interpretation of facts, and elevating wherever they're at, to the next level up, so we can have that next important conversation, as opposed to, being Carl.
Thank
you.
you.
If you don't know the reference,
right,
you can look it up on the net.
Thank you, Anthony. Stephen, good to see you.
Hi, everyone.
Stefan.
Yeah, that's fine. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I hopped on late. But and so I don't really have the full context of talking about the truth and truth telling. But one of the things that Phil, that you just said a moment ago certainly resonates with me, in terms of how we wield the truth, right? And one of the things that I always reflect upon when I'm working with recoveries and participants in training and stuff is, whose truth are we talking about? Their truth or my truth, right? Because one of the things that I recognize is their truth, right? In terms of perceptions, reflections, thought processes can be very different from my truth in the way that I reflect upon stuff. So I always honor, right, where the individuals that I have the privilege to work with is where they are in terms of when they speak about their truths, right? So if their truths are maybe not quite at an honesty quotient that they aspire to be at, that's okay, right? And when I talk about meeting people where they're at, then I understand that sometimes, right, as part of the journey, it is to come to, or I reflect upon that sometimes part of an individual's journey is to maybe come to a different perspective about the truth and how they articulate that, how they talk about it.
Sure.
So I don't have to necessarily be in conflict with them, right? And when I think about and talk about active listening, right? So then that becomes an opportunity sometimes for me to use that motivational interviewing skill you know, drawing discrepancy, right? You know, go, gosh, last week you told me that you really were struggling with this relationship and you don't want to go back to that person anymore. And today, I think I'm hearing something different from you. Help me to understand where you're at, right? So again, whose truth are we talking about? And how am I reflecting upon, you know, this individual that that I have the opportunity to work with? So that's one of the things that I always think about, or I try to keep in mind in perspective when I'm thinking about and working with individuals whose quote unquote honesty quotient might be a little bit different. And one of the things I do want to say, it already got said, is, you know, we hear this term brutally honest, right? And it's been said, right? You know, like, I don't know that brutality is a path forward for me and the people that I want to work with. Right? Just for me. So.
Right. I gotcha. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so when you said how it goes with recovery coaching, I got brought back last week. I was facilitating ethics, and I got brought back to the whole ethical terms, right? And those are things that I've learned here, because my whole life I've been programmed to think a certain way, right? Since at a young age, and at 12 years old, I started learning how to deceive people, right? And I thought it was cool. So my whole life went through it, and I did it really good, right? And then I get into this recovery field to help others help themselves. And now I got to learn this whole field that all these terms and all these methods, right, that we have in place. And I think that if I never learned those methods, right, when I first became a coach and then I put it into practice, it would have never I would have never had nothing to say right now, right? And in the sense of the multi-party vulnerability, that's what I keep thinking of, right? When we deceive people as coaches, who do we harm? And how many people do we harm? Right. So I look back at it, and if I didn't have this training in place, right? I didn't take this, and then I go, I'm gonna be a coach today. And then I start coaching people the way I think, right? I need to coach people then, and I don't have all these things in my head or under my belt, that I'm gonna be deceiving. I'm gonna be deceived, and I'm gonna be okay with it. Because my whole life I was okay with it. But now that I know this deception is wrong, right? And so many levels, then I have the choice to be like, do I continue to deceive, or do I take what I learned in all these trainings that I've had and put it into use, right? And then I have you in mind when you come up to the staff meetings and teach us about the acronym RIGHT and what does that mean to you, and I take all that into consideration, and I think that's all taught. We need to teach each other that, right? As we coach individuals as well too, we need to teach them that, but we can't expect them to know what we know. I bring up to the first time I meet somebody, I'll be like, multi-party vulnerability. They're looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Right. So we got to learn these things, so then put it into action. And I think the more we learn these things, and I know I put this into practice, and I know it's the right thing to do, then the least I'm gonna deceive somebody.
Gotcha. Well said. Thank you, Michael. Great example. Anybody familiar with the Rolling Stones? In the song, you can't always get what you want. She says, I saw her today at the reception. In her glass was a bleeding man. She was practiced at the art of deception. Well, I could tell by her blood-stained hands. So she was practiced at the art of deception. We say recovery coaches have practice. This woman was practiced at the art of deception. Here's your next question to ponder. What is behind deception? Anthony.
Fear.
Okay. Fear. What else? Ivan.
The attempt to conceal something.
The attempt to conceal something. Priscilla.
I say I seen the word motivation on there, but I think the word ego can go in there too.
Ooh, ego. Yes. Mike.
Well, I mean, I think of the word, deception, so deceit or dishonesty or trying to get something over on somebody. I mean, that's what I feel like.
So I want
lack
you
of
to
integrity. Lack of
so,
integrity.
Yeah, but I want you to take that to a deeper level. Why do people deceive?
I like fear for sure. I heard that, fear
okay.
and also, yep, and I don't know. Yeah, let me come back to you on that one.
No problem. Ed.
I would say primarily self-interest.
Self-interest. Yeah. Melissa.
I'm gonna say like misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding. Do you have like an example?
Just maybe lack of communication, not understanding exactly what the other person.
I like that. Thank you. Ivan.
My name is Jamila. I'm a volunteer, and I would say opportunity could be a reason behind deception.
So what's behind the opportunity? Do you have an example?
Self-interest. So I guess you're doing it for your own benefit.
Gotcha.
So that you can gain from that.
Yep. Neetha. Good to see you, Neetha.
Hey, Phil.
How's things over there?
Good. Looking forward to coming to see you in Connecticut soon. Long
Amen.
flight.
Yeah.
I think sometimes unmet needs are behind deception.
Unmet needs are behind deception. What would be one of the needs that's unmet?
Well, depending, it could be everything from financial, attention,
Love.
love. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Christian.
Okay, I got a few if you don't mind. So
I don't mind.
What I've learned along the way is trauma could play a factor into this. Bad guidance. A lot of people grow up without good role models in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one I have is like being a product of your environment, like depending on where you grew up in certain situations. And when people are not used to being shown love, they tend to take out their problems on other people, manipulate other people to try and get their way.
Well said. I like all good. Thank you, Christian. Barry.
I think control.
Control. Gotcha. Angelina.
So for me, I would say anxiety mixed with the like rejection, not accepting someone for who they genuinely are because they're literally too afraid to even say the words out loud. So they deceive.
Got you. Thank you. Percy.
I would go to the extreme and say lost opportunity, which could mean loss of that person's life.
Okay. Thank you. Brian.
I think fantasy, that I know I deceived myself many times, just thinking, hoping that things would go away, that really in the bottom of my heart, it was a crapshoot, right? So I deceived myself. So I think a lot about that is about fantasy and hoping that things would go a certain way, and not really taking a look at what's really in front of me.
Thank you. Mike.
So I was thinking about it a little bit further, and it's like I was thinking about myself, and any time that I tried to deceive somebody, it was definitely, I heard opportunity and gain in there, and it was always about that, but there was also such a lack of empathy on my part, because I didn't care who it affected, how it affected things, never saw the big picture on what a decision like that would make, the ripple effect that one decision can have for everything. Never even crossed my mind. All it was self-serving, lack of empathy, how can I get it over on this person, and and what's it going to do for me? How does it affect me positively? That's about it.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, my again was just said several times, was already been answered. Mine was personal gain, and what I mean by that, when I was out there, in the way I was living my life, I would make a presentation to somebody, to look a certain way, so I get up on them close enough to get the gain.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got arrested, for example, and when I went to court, I would go to court wearing a suit, make sure everything is groomed, make sure everything is in order. You know what I mean? And even raise my hand and say, I swear to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And right behind that, tell the lie, because the personal gain was my freedom. So in my life, it was always, always, when you say what's behind it, mine was always for personal self gain and survival.
Right.
And so that's what was behind it for me.
Yeah, and at the time we frame it as personal gain, but then we look back and go, was that really gain? Was that really what I was doing? A lot of you mentioned a concept of self-deception, right? That you deceived yourself. Is that a thing? Tell me how. Angelina.
So I, for myself, would say yes, absolutely, 100%. I don't listen to anybody else's voice as much as I listen to the voice inside of my own head. So I feel like I am absolutely able to deceive myself and kind of then take that deception and justify it and, continue on with that deception, unfortunately, to myself.
So do you have like an example? I'm putting you on the
So,
spot, like something
yeah.
specific.
So, like, for example, do I need to be on this certain type of medication, right? So instead of seeing for myself the benefits that I get from being on a medication, say like an antidepressant or something, just for instance, I see these benefits. I've been doing this for so long, but instead of accepting that, I deceive myself into believing that I no longer need it. But the reality is, I was stable because I was on it. The deception comes in thinking I no longer need it because that time has passed, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So
sense.
like
Yep.
I'm able to kind of deceive my brain into thinking I no longer need it. But the reality is I needed it all along. And the taking, the no longer taking of it is kind of that reminder down the line that like, oh, hey, you probably did need that and you deceived yourself into thinking otherwise.
Got you. Thank you. Celine.
I would say absolutely. By lying to myself, convincing myself that something is for me when it may not be for me.
So
or vice versa.
No, I just let me ask you a question. So you said when I lie to myself. So if you know you're lying to yourself, then you're not lying to yourself.
As a addiction, though, your thoughts play in your head, right?
Okay.
And you feed into those thoughts.
All right. Yeah. Christian.
So I just had a couple things. So just by deception, it's just me not being observant of my surroundings. And that could come from multiple forms, like letting my guard down in vulnerability in the same sense, because you get comfortable and you learn how to give people the benefit of the doubt because you do want to see the change brought within themselves. So you want to work with this said person and you're giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to hurt you, but really in their intentions wasn't pure.
Okay. Thank you. Mike.
I'm like, oh, Mike. Oh, me, Mike. You know, I was thinking about the lie to myself part, and I know that, you know, the self-deception thing. I know that every time I was about to deceive somebody or trying to go down that road, I clearly knew what I was trying to get. So that part, no, I don't feel like I lied to myself or I was deceiving myself. What I do feel like I was deceiving myself on was the fact that, nah, it's not going to hurt anybody but me. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to be affected by this except for myself. And I don't know if that was just not thinking things through. That always took like reflection later on to go, yeah, maybe that did that. But I think it was just, again, I talked about like the lack of empathy. I think with the lack of empathy in there, I didn't see how stuff I was doing affected everybody else, you know? So
thank you. Anthony.
Yeah, well, I read this wonderful book. Where is it? Leadership and Self-Deception. It's by the Arbinger Institute quite some time ago. A brilliant book, by the way, uncomfortable as F, in a great way, in a really good way. And while I was reading it, and since that time, your question specifically is self-deception a thing? Tell me how. So my answer, yes, 100%. And how for me? I don't know about y'all, but I am a multifaceted, complex piece of machinery and stuff, spirit, mind, body. Oh my God, you know, and I can be incredibly simple. So taking little bits of or lots of what I think is myself, and how where I identify, you know, for example, self-preservation for the body right now, right? That's a very definite thing when rent's due, you know, hungry, don't have the food. You know, wife likes to compartment her food off to one side, and I go, well, you know, it's our food. You know, so you know, all these little areas of you know, where I can fudge and go bigger. Now, the go bigger is okay. So let's say I'm working with CCAR and I'm an employee. Just say I'm not. I'm a volunteer, and I go, well. Now, for me, being part of this great group gives me all kinds of opportunity, and I'm thinking about myself. And well, what about CCAR as an organization and the legacy of CCAR, all and the legacy of, you know, Mr. Phil Valentine after, you know, 20, 50 years from now, after he's passed on, you know, what kind of legacy might I be drawing forward in my actions today or not? So, you know, you know, was it a good idea for me to not tell the whole truth, Your Honor, or do it just for myself, or am I also thinking about CCAR? So, self-deception, absolutely. How is it a thing? Again, that multifaceted, who am I today? You know, and am I a CCAR rep? Am I a volunteer? Am I an employee? Am I a husband? Am I, you know, just little old me trying to get my extra cookie snack? Because I love cookies, especially with my wife makes them, but she gets really upset, you know, if one or two of those awesome chocolate chunk walnut, you know, cacao cookies with the,
Thank you, Anthony.
yes,
Got
got
you.
the idea. Good. Okay.
Thank you. Kevin.
Can you repeat the question, Phil?
No, because I forgot it.
Okay, so
no, can you deceive yourself?
Yeah, honestly too. And what I mean by that is my deception in my world was a code of ethics. And what I mean by that is their honor among thieves.
Wow.
So in that lifestyle, we had a code of you don't tell on each other. This is what we do. We band together, and our life was built on deception. And we knew because when we was going to put the work in of deception, we prepared. We put everything together to have a presentation of deception again. And so I knew I knew what I was doing. I knew I was committing crime. I knew I was deceiving. I knew when I was going in the bank and I was forging something and did the signature look exactly and presenting myself like a person that was supposed to be in the possession of that check. I was true. So I honestly did deceive myself. So when you went back, you said, when you're being honest about it, are you being deceptive? You know, but in my lifestyle, deception was a code. And the more deceptive you could be but be truthful amongst the deceivers, that was a badge of honor. So I think there I had an honest deception amongst the group of people that I dealt with.
I hear you. Thank you. Nathan.
This is interesting. So I kind of, like, I tried to look back and think about self-deception in myself. And I think when I've seen it is when I try to lean into somebody else's narrative that doesn't align with me and what I'm doing. And I start to question, is that valid or the truth, even though it doesn't really kind of sit well with me. And that's when I go back to that, put the blinders on and focus on what you're doing. But yeah, I think I often, especially in the UK, see people trying to fit into somebody else's narrative, and then we deceive ourselves about what's our calling, maybe.
Thank you. Edgardo.
So God has provided me, you know, enough to, he removed the obsession to use out of my life. CCAR has provided me a space where I can make an honest living without infringing on the rights and property of other people. In my mind, when I hear myself ask myself a question, I pick up the phone and I call a mentor or my coach and I say, hey, what do you think about this? Because I always had a proud thing that no one can get over on me coming while I was in the streets. And not many people did, because I seen them coming from a mile away. It's like a reflection of me. So I can see you everywhere. So what I learned in recovery is becoming a good person. I was allowed the chance to, once I owned being a good person, I can see good people. It's almost like buying a car. Once I bought that hoopty, I thought no one else owned. As soon as I cut the corner, I saw 9 of the same hoopties everywhere.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I also identify when I am trying to talk myself out of something that I'm supposed to be doing the right way. And it always sounds like me. The only person I don't take advice from is when I hear it loudly in my head, questioning something that I know is right or wrong.
Gotcha.
I just get a second opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Edgardo. Priscilla.
Thank you for letting me talk again. It resonated with me, and it stuck in my head about, and I'm not sure who, it really doesn't matter. The person who talked about deception and survival, and I was like, it took me back to, of course, personal past, right? But persons who were of service with thinking about meeting people where they're at. For my own life, I did what I did for many times because this is all I knew or how I survived to those things of deception. And of course, we can say the legal ramifications. I'm going to say what I'm going to say because I promise you, I never wanted to spend the night involuntarily anywhere. And part of my own personal past. But if I think of the being the coach and in the coaching position when I'm the recoveries I'm working with, many persons, deception, this is what we know. And it might be truth to us or to them. So I think, I don't know, ulterior motives, but I think that's the real deal of deception is whatever I did in my life, whatever I still do in life, and whatever other people do in their life. I think it's just a meeting people where they're at. And a conversation I had with somebody was, if you just meet me where I'm at, if I'm just here to dot the I's and cross the T's, that's okay. Just provide me with resources and don't pass judgment and don't call me a liar because that might be all I know. Thank you.
Thank you. I think for me, when I think about self-deception, the longer I pursue the journey of recovery, the more difficult it becomes for me. I mean, at the risk of like Anthony, showed us a whole book about leadership and self-deception. So I'm kind of curious about that. But the way I think about it now is self-awareness contradicts self-deception. And the more self-aware I become, the less self-deception plays a role in my life. I think I've always been incredibly self-aware. I mean, Mike, you talked a little bit about it. Like, I can even go back 40 years ago when I was doing massive amounts of cocaine, and every time I lifted that to my nose, I knew it was wrong. But I did it anyway. I don't think that's deception. I was pretty honest about it. I said, Anthony was talking about those cookies. I knew if I eat like 10 of those cookies, I'm not going to feel good. It's probably not going to be good for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. So it was like a decision. I don't think there was any deception on my part. I knew what the truth was, but I chose to do the opposite thing. I don't, and maybe my mother used to call me naive, right? But I never thought about taking advantage of people or stealing from them, or I just wasn't wired. I'm just not wired that way. I mean, I think of my stepmom. She's my mom. She was married to my dad for 30 plus years. And she got a call on the phone, right? And it was a young kid. And the kid said, "Grandma?" And she went, "Corey?" And the next thing, "Yeah, it's Corey. I'm in prison. I'm da, 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 da." Put an older man on who pretended to be a state police officer. The deception was so strong and so powerful, they convinced her that the only way they were going to bail him out of jail was to get $5,000 worth of Home Depot cards, which she went and did. And then after she got them the Home Depot cards and read the numbers to the guy over the line, that she decided, I'll call my daughter, and called the daughter, and "Is Corey okay?" And she goes, "Yeah, he's right here." And then she almost broke, like physically, mentally, spiritually broke at the level of deception that was perpetrated on her, because she believed, she wanted to believe that she would believe that people, how could they do that? And so, the question that we didn't get to that I want to leave with you is that, and for you, it'll all be different, is how do you deal with an obvious recovery deception, that the recovery is deceiving others to stay ahead, hurting people to stay ahead? What role does honesty and wielding the truth play in all that? What is your responsibility to telling the truth? What is your obligation? Michael, it was beautiful that you brought up multi-party vulnerability, right? So you have a recovery who's maybe pretending to be Corey, and he says he's, in this case, scamming old people out of money so that he can pay his bills. What do you do as a recovery coach? Those are some big questions. Again, when we talk about deception, it comes with, I think, deception of self. To me, how honest are you being with yourself? When you think about deception, are you easily deceived? And what is that about? I think as we become coaches, most of us are not easily deceived anymore, but there could be a time that we're still deceived about some things. And what is that about us? And again, what do we do if we see a recovery being incredibly deceptive? What is our obligation? What is our role? So it's not 11:30 at night, but it is 11:30 a.m. Our 90 minutes are up. What an incredible topic that you guys shared on. And I'm so grateful that you were all honest, open, and vulnerable. I think I personally have learned a lot and helped my perspective. Wishing you a very wonderful weekend and a deceit-free time. So until next time, peace out. Live long and prosper.